Hello and welcome to Moneylife News and Views. I am Debashis Basu. After 7 years, Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi has suddenly re-emerged as a business-friendly politician. This was supposed to be his original mojo, remember? In two separate speeches in the parliament, he used words that would bring tears to those with a religious devotion to the magic of capitalism and privatization. One was, the culture of abusing private sector is no longer accepted. I'm not sure who abuses the private sector. And second, can Babus do everything? What type of capability have we acquired by handing over the country to the Babus? This is the Prime Minister talking. To this, Sanjeev Sanyal, Principal Economic Advisor to the Finance Ministry, tweeted, "Live to see an Indian Prime Minister make such an unapologetic pitch for the India's private sector. I can only say the wonders of tortuous Indian policy making delivered through political speeches never cease, and neither do the reactions of otherwise accomplished people to such political speeches. This is because we easily forget or we suffer from willful blindness." What are we forgetting here? PM Modi came to power almost 7 years ago, riding on a highly energetic and imaginative marketing campaign that colorfully combined slogans, promises, accusations, and effectively tapping the anger of everyone from jobless youths to frustrated businessmen. Among his two memorable pre-election slogans were, "The government has no business to be in business," and two, "Minimum government, maximum governance." Now we are hearing the same thing in a different language. In the interim 7 years, we were treated to an embarrassing hurricane of empty memes, catchphrases, coinages, alliterative coinages, and clever abbreviations, plus schemes, yojanas, projects, a much higher dose of babudam, and of course, the madness of demonetization. Not much by way of privatization, nor any hosannas for the private sector. In fact, quite the opposite. PM Modi started off by changing the names of the UPS schemes, expanding them and adding many of his own. Taking a leaf out of the previous governments, it announced a loan mela called Mudra. Thinker and writer Arun Shourie correctly described the government way back as UPA plus a cow. Now, today we are talking about privatization, but there was no reform. In the last 7 years, there's hardly been any reform of the public sector, no meaningful disinvestment, only sleight of hand, which is ONGC buying Hindustan Petroleum, Power Finance Corporation buying Rural Electrification Corporation, and so on. Billions of rupees have been taken out of government companies as dividends, completely denuding them. A few of them don't even have enough money to pay for salaries. Ownership, corruption, lack of accountability of the public sector banks remains unchanged, with the result that hundreds of billions of taxpayers' money has been injected into them just to keep them alive. What about the private sector? And today PM Modi is saying nobody has any right to abuse the private sector. A good way to figure out is to turn to the thoughts of wealth creators being extolled today. Rahul Bajaj was forced to say, "We had an emperor on May 27th, 2014, and the shine is wearing off." Among PM Modi's many catchy slogans was tourism, not terrorism. But despite ranking 8th among 140 countries under cultural resources and business travel, India ranks a lowly 109 in tourist business infrastructure or tourist service infrastructure in a study by World Economic Forum. Now, why does this happen? It's simply because the small businesses or even large businesses have absolutely no incentive and have too many hurdles to grow their businesses. A few days ago, Vallabh Bansali, financial expert and die-hard fan of the current regime, said the budget 2021 beats that of 1991 reforms. And yet, just a few months ago, he had said, if some tax regime or provisions goes against the government comes and changes the law. The citizen is battered so that there is no way his innovation can work. He must always lose. Subsidies, arbitration awards are not paid fully, and therefore there is lack of confidence. This is how the government treats the private sector. We have gone beyond ease of doing business and come to a stage where the government has to say, "Please do business." This was 7 years of let private sector create wealth kind of philosophy that the PM is talking about now. In 2015, When the Prime Minister gave his first media interview, Hindustan Times asked him, the business community is upset that not much has changed in terms of ease of doing business and with what they see as a spate of tax notices. Do you think that the government has been able to make a difference? The PM's reply was a masterful example of misdirection. What was asked, and see what he replied. My government is working for the common man. Industry has to come forward to take the benefits of the process we have set in motion. Red tape should not be there does not mean it should not be there for Mukesh Ambani, but there for common man. That won't do. In fact, today is far more red tape and tax terrorism for small and medium businesses. Hence, my question is, when the PM talks about privatization and capitalism, the private sector can't be abused, which PM Modi should we believe in? The one whose slogans sent our pulses racing before the elections, but who has made no change to the maddening hurdles of doing business? Or the one whose speech a few days ago is making us weep with joy when he said wealth creators are also important for the country because only then wealth can be distributed? Are we to believe in the Modi government that wasted 7 years debunking Big Bang reforms and obsessively tinkered with public sector banks through Gyan Sangams, Indradhanush, Banks Boards Bureau, recapitalization, bank mergers? Or the one that is now seen as a radical privatizer, the best in the last 30 years of just 2 public sector banks? Human memory is short. There is a finite amount of how many things one can focus on and remember, and that limit is much smaller than we think. We remember only what is very recent, which is called recency bias, and meld it with our own other inherent biases, which is Modi is the Indian Thatcher, and come to very quick conclusions. Human memory about policy issues is even shorter because this is something very abstract and doesn't relate, cannot be applied to our own lives. We can't relate to it. That alone can explain why many are deliriously happy with the PM's latest slogans and ignore 7 years of poor doing business climate, tax extortion, extortive oil prices, and high dependence on babus and a big state that has kept the enterprise system stifled. Thanks for watching.